Okay, is this it?
Yeah.
This is the big party right here, isn't it? Turn my volume down. Let's see. Awesome. Well, we had a little bit of technical difficulties, but I think we got them all set up. Thank you for tuning in. It is Bionicle Day. And why is it Bionicle Day? Because 810 looks kind of like Bio. By the way, for those who've never seen a live stream of mine before, I'm here with my lovely wife, Aili.
Hi, everybody.
She's going to be reading some of the comments that you guys are going to make. And I hope that you guys feel free to tune in. I want to make sure that we have this live stream going correctly. I am streaming on Facebook, but we're trying to port this over to, let's see, to Twitch.
Yes.
I think we're getting some notes here. Let's see, I'm going to log on to Twitch very quickly and see if you guys can see me. How about that?
Yeah. Steve Hartman's here. Stephen Wirt is here too.
Oh, okay, cool. We got two Steves who know a lot about this. Okay. Let's see. So the shame of it is you guys are old hats. You know me pretty well. But let's see if we can get into the live stream here myself. Because if I log in this way, then they want me to verify my login.
Mm-hmm.
Why have you made it so hard? I have to go into my other email account just to get the key for Twitch. Because I know you guys want me to be able to see both feeds.
Well,
yes.
You've got exciting things for Bionicle Day here.
Let's see, what did I bring? I brought, let's see, I have all the comics I worked on, which I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen already.
Liam says you are live. So.
On Twitch?
I think so.
Okay, great. I was hoping I can see it. I'm going to trust that you guys can just follow Twitch. Then how's that?
Yes. Matt Lombardi says your glasses are glorious.
So here's the thing about these glasses, and it's kind of a long story. They were, I made a point of wearing these. I had to dig these out. So when I first got the Bionicle job, let's see. I knew I had to do a lot of little detail work, and so I started wearing these magnifiers, and this is the very pair that I drew all of Lego Bionicle with. I think I got these as of issue 2. And it was mainly so I could, get in really small and draw the little gears and sprockets and everything and get my face close to the art. I actually set up my drafting table a little bit differently than I would for some of my other jobs. I actually had a second drafting table with a really low chair. This is kind of goofy, but what I did was after I penciled everything out and did a lot of the rough inking, I then switched my artboard over to this other table that was set higher on a lower chair and put these glasses on, and it put everything right under my nose like this. And so with my back straight, I could add in a lot of little noodly details and such. Let's see here. Looks like I have my passcode to add into Twitch here. So I'm going to add this so I can see the same feed that you guys can. This will be fun. Give me just a second here. By the way, I want to thank everybody for having me a part of this. Bionicle, when I worked on it, was several years ago, but a lot of the people who read it and were a fan of the toy, if you were 10 years old in 2005, 2006, well, you're now a young adult. And it's kind of interesting to see that so many people have joined and come back to this. Why is Twitch having me do all this? I've already joined. Okay. Let's see. What I want to talk about tonight, I'm sorry, a little bit flustered. We had a little bit of technical difficulty. We were going to go through OBS, but we're actually going through Zoom. I'm not sure exactly what the problem was. But tonight, I'm going to be drawing Axonn from the Bionicles, which was my favorite. Here he is. This was the model that I actually used to draw Axonn with way back when. I had to dig him out of the mothballs, dust him off, and get him cleaned and ready to go. I have a couple of the other Bionicles that I worked on, or that were some of the models that I drew from. I brought art from the archives. I have some layouts which didn't get used. They were cover concepts that I presented. I have some pictures of the original pencils before they were inked. I have got the sample pieces that I did to get the job for Bionicle, which is pretty great. What else is over here? Oh, I've got some really, really cool things. I've got some fan-made drawings that other Bionicle fans gave me. And I've talked about Bionicle at conventions before a couple times, but never to a group that knew Bionicle this well. So this is going to be kind of exciting. I'm going to leave it up to Aili to really kind of manage the comments. I'm still not exactly sure how to get to the, let's see, I want to get to the Twitch feed and I'm not sure how to do it. So
I'd say don't worry about it. I think I
questions that
can
I'm going
manage
to
it.
get
So
are going to have to come to me through Facebook. So it looks like we have someone helping us on Twitch.
yeah,
And if they
let me
forward
just
some of the
talk to Liam
Twitch,
and you'll be okay. Okay.
the Twitch questions, yeah, we'll go through. But let's start with first things first. Let me tell you how I got the job, right? So I started out in comic books. I self-published a comic book called, if I got it over here, I'll throw that on the floor. Here we go. I self-published this comic book called Shiver in the Dark. Hope you guys can see that. This is issue 1. And this was back in 2001. The book did pretty well for me. I wrote it, drew it, lettered, colored it, published it, did everything. Here was issue 2. It was a year later, and then issue 3, and so on and so forth. And I started traveling the country promoting this comic book, going to different comic book conventions. And one of the ones I attended was Wizard World Philadelphia. By the way, Wizard World got bought today. Fan Expo now owns Wizard, so we're going to see what becomes of that. But years ago, when I was just getting started, Wizard was an incredible juggernaut. And Wizard World Chicago 2001 was my first show ever. Fast forward several years, I think it was around 2004 or 5, I was at Wizard Philadelphia, and an editor slash art director from DC Comics was at my table. And here's the embarrassing part. I don't know who it was. I remember this happening, and the person told me that they were that they worked with DC and that they liked the books that I had made, this guy, and he wanted to know if he could have a couple copies to take back to the office. And this is the truth. I honestly thought, well, I'd really like to sell them. I hate to just give them away, you know. But though I didn't know who this gentleman was, he indeed was from DC Comics, and I thought, well, sure, I got to give him some. I gave him some, and nothing happened. I went home, did my comic book convention, counted my money, paid my bills, went on to the next show, and then a couple of months later, I think out of the blue, I was contacted by Jay Gardner. And Jay Gardner was the first editor on Lego Bionicle. To be fair, the Lego comic book the Bionicle comic book had existed with DC before me. You guys know all this, but we're going to make sure on the same page here. This is one that Carlos Diana did, and it was inked by Randy Elliott. There were a couple people who worked on this first Bionicle series. But what had happened was, and I don't know if you guys ever heard this, I don't think I'm talking out of class and giving secrets the way I'm not supposed to, but the way I understand things, Lego had been very happy with DC, with what DC had done on the Bionicle comic book, but they'd also done it for a few years, and they were looking to sort of reimagine the entire line. Obviously, they wanted to keep the fans they had, but they also wanted to reach some new fans. And to be honest, I think that from what I remember, I think Lego kind of had the idea that they had done the comic book for several years and it had sort of had its moment, and maybe they were going to try something different. And from what I understand, it was DC Comics said to Lego, hey, before you decide to go with a different route to promote the toy, give us another shot. What do you want to do with the toy? Is there something we can do different with it? And they got talking. And the way I understand it, it was kind of up to DC to pitch a different Bionicle concept to catch Lego's attention. And what had happened was the Bionicle toy line had been around for several years. And Lego, as I said, wanted to keep their existing fans, but they wanted to get some new fans as well. They were looking to expand their audience. And one of the things that I think they were aware of was that at this point, because Bionicle had been around for several years, at some point they thought that maybe their fans might be phasing out of it a little bit. And so they were considering a way to maybe make the toy line interesting to their existing fans and hang on to them a little bit later into their teenage years. And so if you think about the earlier Bionicles, none of them, they all had tools, but they didn't really have anything like weapons. I mean, Axonn even having an axe is kind of a great departure. You know, we'd seen things that looked more like shovels before, but this was definitively a weapon. Also, you think about how aggressive the Piraka looked and their glowing eyes, that brick with the light bulb in it was such an amazing new thing that they added. And so to some extent, they were retooling the toy line, but that meant they were also going to retool the comic book. So what had happened was they were looking for new artists. They were looking for new style. I think that Lego didn't really have a strong concept of what they wanted, but they were looking to be wowed. And so Jay had contacted me and he said that he'd seen this comic book, my sample in the office, and was I interested in trying out for the job? Now, here's the funny part. I was positive there was no way in the world that I would get this job. The reason being is because if you've ever seen some of my artwork, at least outside of Bionicle, I'll turn to some of the pages of this book. This is I hope you guys can see this. How does that look there, Aili?
So far, so good.
Can you see the panels?
Go that way just a little. That looks pretty good, yeah.
Yeah, so you see how sort of monstrous and expressive some of this is. This is not the style that I would think that Lego would want a comic book to be rendered in. But to be fair, they were looking for something different and they were trying lots of different artists. And so they asked me to try out. And so I remember I thought there was no way I could get this job. But, you got to try and do something interesting. And so I was about to get off the phone with the editor and I said, I'll go to the store. Let me grab a couple Bionicles. I'll look them over. And I said, I think I can probably look up some people I know who have some of the existing comic book. I can grab some of those and see what you guys have done already. And he made a point of saying, please don't do that. And I was very surprised. He said, we really are looking for something different. We know the way you draw. Do your thing. And even though he told me this, it was kind of hard for me to believe, mainly because the books that came before me I thought were really, really good. And typically when you draw something like a robot, something that's manufactured like an automobile or an airplane, you want really clean, crisp mechanical lines. And I was always known for things that were so expressive and organic. You guys know my work. I know some of you loved it. I know there were some of you who weren't as excited to see me new on the book, the different flavor. But I really was a departure from what the previous artists had been doing. So I still wasn't, even though Jay had told me to draw in my own style, I really wasn't completely believing it. I'm just being honest. The day came to where they asked me to draw one sample page and they gave me a little script. And I think there were about 7 or 9 of us who tried out for this book. It was all by invitation. We didn't know who each other were. We didn't know who you were competing against. And also, we didn't know if any of us would get the job. I mean, fundamentally, there was an issue here that even if one of us was believed to be the best, that doesn't mean that Lego necessarily wanted to continue the book. So this was a little bit of a thing where the artists were trying to get the job and DC was trying to keep the book going with Lego as well. So I think I was given a description to draw a battle scene between Legos that were really from before the Piraka, ones that I wasn't used to working on. And I think DC Comics, or maybe Lego, one of the two, overnight FedEx me a couple of the toys so I would have them. And they described a battle scene that was supposed to take place in an underground sort of basement. I think they described it as looking sort of like the underground archives of the National Library or something like that. But it was really pretty open to interpretation. And so I remember I was about to sit down and draw the piece, and I was still convinced that I should draw it really cleanly and with straight, high contrast black and white lines. And I really thought I could do that. It was only one page. Why can't I do that, right? Well, so I was about to get started, and then I started thinking, 2 things. One, he really did tell me to draw up my own style. It is a tryout. The Shiver in the Dark book had many different styles in it. All of them were pretty dark, though. Some were more photographic. Parts of this book was watercolored. Parts of it was actually photography, so it was all across the board. And so I thought, okay, if he really wants me to go all out and do my own thing, I should do that. And then the thing that really convinced me that I should do that is a horror came over me, and that was, what if I made a piece of art that was really clean, high contrast line art, very much like what had come before me, and that they loved it and they gave me the job based on that. I felt very confident I could make one sample page that was in that style. It wasn't what I was used to doing, but then if I got the job, would I be able to draw, issue after issue, page after page in that style? And I thought, okay, that is asking for trouble. So I finally convinced myself to just go down the path and make whatever I thought was the coolest piece that I could make. And so I cut loose, and I think I have a picture of it here. I don't know if you guys ever seen this, because I don't know if it's ever been published. Let's see if I have it here. Actually, you know what? I have two pieces, or I have only one of two pieces. I actually made two pieces. One of them isn't here. I don't have the underground library one. But I made that piece. I'm still going to show you something you haven't seen before. I made that one piece, and I turned it in as requested, but I turned in a second piece. And so this is one that I turned in to apply for the job that wasn't requested. And it says, this is Rakshi, who I guess is a Piraka. Can you guys see this? How's the framing on that look?
Yeah, pretty good. Pull it back just a little. That's good.
So this is the actual drawing. I'm pretty positive that this is the first ever drawing I did of Bionicle.
You can use your table camera too.
Oh, I can. I forgot. Yeah, we're going to switch to the table cam here in a second. But anyway, this was the very first piece I made, and I hope you guys can see it. I'm going to set up my table cam and switch cameras so you can get a better view of this. We actually spent a little bit of time trying to get this right.
We do have some questions for you too, and some comments. So I'll read those while you switch over. Do you know how to do it?
If I can get my glasses back on and open up the right window. I'm unfortunately seeing it on Facebook, which is not going to help me. I really need Zoom back open.
Yeah.
So let's see. I think I can do it right here. Let's see how this looks.
Okay.
Does that work for everybody?
They'll be able to see both now, I think. Yeah. I think that's great.
Let's do this. Camera's so heavy, it won't stay up.
Yeah.
Okay, so you see both right now. So this was the piece I made. This is the very first piece I made, and I hope you can see it's got some splatter on here, which is really loose and something that the other Lego artists who had come before me hadn't done. This part here was actually rendered by me putting ink on my finger, and I would smear it. There were a lot of things that I did by hand. These were sort of rendered the same way. I wanted this world that was really kind of smoky and really loose and organic. I know we've got some questions. I'm gonna this is gonna take gonna take just a moment, but I think you guys will be interested in this. I used to always say that my favorite comics to draw were ones that were really organic. I like to draw wood. I like to draw smoke. I like the atmosphere. I like nature. And then the Bionicle was kind of the opposite of that. All the pieces were manufactured and well tooled, and they have to be, or else they won't snap together. But to me, that was a little bit hard for me to make the things be really lifelike. And so when they told me to do my own thing and that I had some freedom, I really played with that idea. So for example, here's the cover to issue 1 for the book. I know a lot of fans loved me for this and a lot of them hated me, but I bent the spine on this the Piraka here so that it looked a little bit more human-like in terms of its life. The toy won't do that. But I kind of grew up with the Transformers cartoons, which were based on the toy designs, but they bent the rules a little bit as far as what they could move and how they could be represented to add more life to them. I had the toes curl on the Piraka here to fold over the canister. And then the other thing I did was I said, I want them to be able to get dirty. I want them to be able to get bent. I want them to be able to get scratched, all these different things. And I wanted the colors on them to really be the colors of the object, the physical object, to be affected by the light around them. And so this was, I only colored, I think, 3 pieces for Lego Bionicle, and this was the last one I did. And I actually had so many corrections on this. The biggest issue was this figure was all white, and I gave him red glowing eyes. And so I had red reflections coming off of all of this. And that was the sort of thing Lego didn't like, because the toy was inherently white. And I would say, well, there's this big red light bulb. It's going to reflect red. And they said, yeah, but let's keep the inherent color of the toy intact. And if you go and you look at the other issues that came out, except for the number 0 cover, the number 0 poster, and the number 1 cover, everything else was colored by Alex Blayart. But if you look at my colors, I used a lot more muted colors. I had a lot more atmospheric colors that blended in from one another. I've got a stack of Legos here, or Bionicles. Where are they? Here they are. If you look at this 0 issue, look at how the colors dance around off the objects a lot more here. They bleed in and out of each other. I thought this was really dynamic, but it's also more of an adult approach. And I think that Lego gave me a lot of freedom, but they were also a little bit afraid of going too crazy, too far down this path. So originally I was going to draw all the pencils and inks for Bionicle, plus do the colors of the covers. And after going back and forth on how to do this one, as well as the poster inside it, and then a third color piece like this, I just said, you've got a colorist you really like in Alex Blayart. Let's keep it simple. Let's have him do all the coloring. They gave me no argument on that, and frankly, I think it was probably what they wanted anyway. Yeah. But let me back up here for a second. When I said earlier I want to do all this organic stuff rather than robots and machines, I really had to figure out a way to connect with all this. And my way of doing that was anything that would allow them to exist in a more organic environment, anything I could do to make them more lifelike, I would do. I always tried to make them, their faces wouldn't really change, but I would try to give them expressions. Or if they couldn't have expressions, I would have the lighting suddenly change for that moment. If they said something really grim, the lighting would turn really dark and dramatic. If they said something really hopeful, I would try to make it a really well-lit panel. So all the art was designed, I felt, to try to put more character and more emotion into the figures. Now, I can go on and on and on. I have lots of things to tell you about, but I'll bet there's some questions that people want answered. So let's switch to some of that.
Yes. Let me just give you a sense of who's here. So I know we have 21 folks watching on Facebook, and both Stephen and Liam are helping us pull in things from Twitch.
Thanks, you guys.
So Matt Lombardi asked, are you doing the New York Comic Con this year?
I just had the opportunity to sign up for my table, and I'm not sure that we're going to be able to make it. I'd like to. I went last year. If there weren't, or the year before, if there weren't a COVID situation, I think I'd say absolutely. But right now, it's definitely in question.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say no, but I'm certainly not in a position where I can say yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then Paul Justin says, can I just say I've really grown to love your art style for the comics? Iconic.
Well, I appreciate that, and that feels good, because I will tell you, when I tried out for this job, here's a fun story. When I turned in, I wish I had the other piece here to show you. I thought I did. I have, by the way, when I got this job, I saved everything.
Yes.
As much as I possibly could. I saved all the scripts. I saved the emails. I made Xeroxes of pencils, which later got inked over. And so there's an awful lot in the archives. Now, if you've tuned into my live feeds before, we have got a storage facility, which we're constantly trying to clean out and pull things out of. And so we're not sure where everything is. I'm glad I was able to find this. But the other piece that I turned in to get the job was really loose and expressive like this. I mean, I had no idea what they were even going to think about things like this painted smoke. And so here's what's so funny. I turned this piece in electronically. And this was long enough ago that no one had cell phones. We all had email, but we did have landlines and answering machines. Okay. So I remember I happened to be away from my house when Jay Gardner, the editor at DC of Bionicle, wanted to call and talk to me about my sample. And I hit play on the answering machine, and he left me this really sweet message, which I honestly think I have someplace. I think I encoded it digitally. And basically what he did was he said, "Hey, Stuart, this is Jay. I got your piece," and it's and there was this long pause. And I said, "Oh my gosh, they hate it. He's going to tell me he's not even going to pay for it, you know?" And he said, "It's incredible." And I was wowed. He said, "We really like it here at DC. Lego likes it, but they've not seen anything like it. It's very dramatically different from them." So what happened was it looked like they took several samples they got, they showed them Lego, and from there, Lego picked a good number of them. And then DC hired a colorist to color those samples. And then those samples were given back to Lego, and they had focus groups of children look at the samples, and the kids got to talk about which ones they liked best. And if I recall, I think there were 7 groups where they broke up in age groups. And they had somebody, if I remember correctly, who had gotten 3 first place votes out of the 7.
Okay.
I only got 2 first place votes. But I was second for everybody else.
Wow. And
the thing that was cool they liked about me was of the youngest group, I was their favorite, and of the oldest group, I was their favorite. Yeah. And so the way they described it to me was, and I was surprised they gave me all this information, that they said, "Well, then that's our guy," pretty quickly. Yeah. I wish I knew who the other artists were. I can tell you I went to the DC Comics offices one time. I'm probably not even supposed to tell you this, but I had gotten the job. I I was working, I think, on issue 0, and I just happened to be in one of the offices, and I got to see some of the other samples, and I can't believe they showed them to me. But the only one I remember seeing for sure was by, I think it was by Tom Grinberg. And the only reason why I'm telling you this is because his sample was awesome.
Yeah.
And I really thought, wow, I'm really up for it. You know, like the guys who came before me were really good. Grinberg's sample was really good. My sample was very different. And it was one of the things where Jay was telling me the truth. They were looking for a different style and wanted to go a different route. And I know for a fact of all the artists worked on Lego Bionicle, none of them were given the freedom that I was given, at least in terms of bending the figures, doing things with the lighting, putting so much dirt and grit into the world. And as well, some of the panels in here are actually photographed. I made some of the backgrounds out of photographs, and I think there are 2 panels, in fact, where I actually wanted something really dramatic, and I used the toy, held it up with dramatic lighting all around it, photographed it, and then went over it with Photoshop. So I got to use all kinds of different art styles, which was really pretty wonderful. But here's the funny part. I remember I got the job. I'm telling all the good stories here, by the way. I got the job, and I guess just before I got the job, I was told that I had made it to the past the first round of tryouts. They made my colors. The colors scored really well, and I was having more and more calls with Jay about this job. And then one day he called me, and the conversation was going kind of long, and I just had a feeling he was going to offer me the job. And lo and behold, he did. And the funny thing about this was it was very professional up until that point. And I'd agreed to do it. He was excited to have me on. I was excited. It was such a big thing for me. And then he very casually said something. It was kind of small, and I think he said, you know, I don't think I've seen a lot of your work before. You know, what other publishers had you worked for? And I said, I haven't done any comics before. And the phone just went quiet. I mean, I had self-published some comics, but I never worked for DC or Marvel or anything else. And the phone went quiet. And before Jay could say anything, I said, Jay, don't worry, I'm not going to miss the deadline. He said, no, I'm not worried. He said, yeah, you are, because I know I've never done this before, but you should be worried, but I'm going to do this right. The other thing about it was he'd offered me the job. It's illegal to pull it back.
Yeah,
you can't do
right.
that. So everybody was a little bit panicked, I'm sure. But I said, Jay was so great to me in that I said to him, listen, this is my first job. I want this job. I'm going to work really hard on it. I said, here's all I ask. I said, just bear with me if I ask some dumb questions. And he said, no, that's totally fine. And I don't know if he was telling me the truth or not, but he said, I'm actually kind of excited to think this is your first job. Yeah. He said, you only get to have one first job, and he was going to be a part of it. And I will tell you, I've often kind of thought that a really good editor is a little bit like a really good coach. I think a really good sports coach is somebody who looks at the players they have and looks at their strengths and weaknesses and figures out how to encourage them when they need that and how to get them to pump the brakes when they don't. And Jay was really, really good for me. I felt that any questions I had with Jay, they were heard. He really listened to me. He encouraged me to be a little bit daring. Mm-hmm. You know, there were only a few times where I thought there was something that I wanted to change in the script, and he always listened. And I think a lot of my way of interaction with editors now was really set up by the relationship that I had with Jay. There were very few times where I changed things in Bionicle, but one of the ones that comes to mind, if you guys have the comics in front of you, I think it's in issue 2, which is where Axonn first appears. Yeah, I'm an Axonn guy. It's my favorite guy. On page 2-3, where is it? Let's see. Yeah, it's this panel right here. I hope you guys can see this. This one here. So this panel here doesn't really appear in the script initially. At least that beat doesn't. And it was one of these things where Axonn is giving this big speech about purpose and who he is and why he's doing what he is. And I just kind of felt it needed a different break. I thought he needs a scene where he really just kind of grandstands. If he's going to lay out all the Piraka, I always felt like he was the character with the greatest sort of built-in purpose throughout the series, and he sort of declares that moment here in the script. And so all I did was tell the editors, like, I want to change the pacing. I want to add a panel. I think this is a big, important moment. Let's give it its own its own beat, and he liked that. I can tell you though, because there were many people involved with this, there were Greg Farshy wrote it. He is the Lego guru, the Bionicle guru. Toby Dudkowitz, I think, was the art director at Lego, and there were times when there would be something like a 6 or 7 person group phone call. They do Zoom meetings like this now, but at the time, this was all just a group phone call, and everybody would say who was on the line. And any questions or anything that I wanted to sort of alter or manipulate from the script, I had to talk to DC, and they had to forward it to Lego. DC made comic books, Lego made toys, and so DC sort of served as the go-between between Lego and myself to make sure everything was smooth. I frankly really didn't change that much, but when I wanted to, Jay listened, and sometimes he'd say, that's okay, go ahead and do that. You know, we'll tell Lego you're doing that. Other times they say, let's talk to Lego. But after about the first 2 issues, there really wasn't a lot of that happened. I figured out what their sensitivities were. They figured out what I was good at doing, and we just kind of got in rhythm, is the best way I know to put it. I can tell you, though, one of the funnier things that happened was, and this might have been one of my last conversations with them all on the phone. We had, let's see, I'd gotten the job, and issue 0 was a poster, right? As well as a cover. And, oh, you guys have to see this. Where did I put it? Where's the issue 0 here? I can't believe I didn't dig this out. Do you guys have one of these?
Oh, a couple of people have talked about issue 0, yes, in the comments here.
Okay, because if you don't have one of these, this was a lot of fun. There was no secret that I was going to be the Lego guy, because clearly there's where they ran my photo.
You can use your table camera.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot. I've got my table camera here. There's where they ran my photo. So everybody knew I was coming. Boy, look at how young I was. But this issue was full comic size. The next issue, I think, was still full comic size. But then issue 2, as you can see, was a little bit shorter. Okay. And so I was wrapping up my phone call with them. And they said, oh, by the way, the next issue is going to be 3/4 of an inch shorter. And I thought, what does that mean? And they said they really meant not as tall. Like, I thought they meant not as many pages, or what are you talking about? And what happened was they changed the packaging on this book, but they didn't tell me that until after I'd already drawn a lot of this issue. So some of the panels had to go back and be redrawn, or the panels had to be moved around. A lot of this was kind of done on the fly. You can see this is an awfully tight crop on that panel. This top one here too. There was just not enough time to alter everything. But what had happened was, the reason they did this, they packaged it differently. They used 2 little sticky tabs, and it allowed the book, it allowed Lego to save some money and make the book much more efficiently and effectively. And that's why, if you're wondering why it's a smaller size, that's exactly why, because it was packaged differently.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm gonna jump in just on, we've got lots and lots of questions, okay? So,
yes.
Hey there, Stuart, excited for the Cincinnati Comic Expo and hope to catch you there one day. Will your Axonn piece copies be available for purchase there?
I don't know what we're gonna do with Axonn today. I haven't even made it. But I'll tell you what, I know that a lot of people have been writing me more and more about the Lego Bionicle stuff. I'm delighted that there's this interest in it. I'm trying to bring more and more of it. So if you come to the Cincinnati show, you know, I'm going to bring some of the stuff. Even if I don't get the show today, I will bring more. So
yeah, and you do have your own print of Axonn at some point somewhere.
I drew one of him that everybody really liked. I'm trying to remember where that was.
Yeah.
I threatened that I was going to make a big Axonn sometime for Bionicle Day, and I think that's kind of turning into what this is.
Gotcha. Maybe that's where I remember hearing that. Okay. Someone from Twitch asks, why did you dip out of drawing Bionicle after issue 11 of the 2006 to 2008 run?
So this is a great question. So here's the lesson for everybody if you ever work in comic books, right? Marvel, DC, Lego, whomever you're working for, they've got some awesome toys, but they are their toys. They are not yours. You get to play with them for as long as you were invited to be a guest, and you do the best things you can with them. But keep in mind, at some point they will invite someone to play with them after you. And basically what happened was, the same way I got the job to do Bionicle was the same way that I lost it. every couple of years they refreshed the look and feel of the toy line as well as the comic. And I think it was wise that they constantly tried to bring in new people and give it a fresh new take. The only thing I can say about it is I'm a little bit bummed about was I really thought I was going to have it for a third year. They really revamped things right after my second year. In fact, I thought I was going to be able to keep the job, but then at the last minute, they brought in a whole bunch of new people and they went for a cleaner art style again. The only thing that I have to say that really bums me out about that was I remember I was at San Diego and I was at the Lego table signing with Greg Farshtey. They had copies they were giving away of Lego Bionicle. And I don't remember who it was who came to me, but they said, good news. We've decided to extend Lego Bionicle for a couple more years and we love what you're doing. And I just thought, oh, well, great. I've got a job. I'm going to keep doing what I've been doing for 2 years. And so my only complaint was, had I known that I wasn't going to draw the third year, I would have spent my time at San Diego lining up another job with another publisher. I don't think that anybody misled me or anything like that. The truth of the matter was they were figuring out what they were doing with the company, and they had committed to Bionicle, but not necessarily me or the comic or anything. They're constantly developing it. I did tell myself that I really wanted to have a 3-year run on it and buy a house. I had a 2-year run on it, and the housing market went really bad in 2009, and I bought a house anyway.
Yeah.
All kind of evened out. But here I'll show you a couple pieces that are really exciting. This is something that's from the little Bionicle archives. When I tell you I saved everything, I mean I really did. This here was one of about a dozen layouts that I did for what would be issue 1. This was the actual cover, but this is sort of a quick concept. You can see I had the strong moon back here, or sun back here, which I kept, and I was going to have the main figure backlit. It was going to mostly be a silhouette, and this is the can. This is the lid of the can floating. Remember the Piraka came in these sort of canister type containers, and I wanted this really dramatic crashing waves, and you can see I kept the mountain in here, which originally on this cover, this mountain went up really high, and this was a much deeper lagoon, so it was even darker than it is right here. Lego liked it that I could do this dark gritty stuff, but at some point I dialed it up so much I think they pumped the brakes a little bit. But this is one of the layouts I proposed, and what I thought I was going to do was, by virtue of having the character mostly be in silhouette, it really would be kind of creepy and ominous. As it worked out, they wanted the main character to be the white Piraka, and I think that they were just concerned that he was not going to be visible enough. So the concept is kind of here, and you can see I kept in some of the dark spots, but they got relegated to things outside of the main character, and we still kept his face really well illuminated. Otherwise, with this glowing sort of moon sun thing back here, almost all of this would have been in silhouette. We wouldn't have put all those highlights on there, but we wanted to be able to show the toy. And to be honest, that was probably the #1 struggle that I had with this book for the entire 2 years that I was on it, of how much detail can I put in and how much can I take out? How much can I say, hey, we've got a bright light source, this is silhouette, let's eliminate it. So there was always a little bit of a healthy back and forth between me and Lego. This page here, hope you guys can see this. This is a layout that I made of the very first page from Bionicle #1. So here is the printed issue, right? And here's sort of my pacing for how I thought the thing was going to work out. Now, when I first started drawing this book, I did rough layouts of each page like this pretty quickly, but I only did a couple of them because what I found happened was after I'd already drawn it once small as a layout to then draw it big, I kind of felt like it lost a lot of its spontaneity. So there aren't many of these that exist. It's also interesting to note, I took this panel out and I made this one just sort of a longer horizontal. I thought it sped the chase up a little bit. The other thing is, let's see, you'll like this. Here is the printed page to issue 2. Now, I don't have the original art for that, but I have got a really nice color Xerox. So this may surprise everybody, but this is what the original pages that I turned in look like. So I hope you can see there's a lot of gray information on here. This isn't just a strict black and white. see all the gray that's in the rocks and such. This is difficult to color if you're a comic book colorist. Strict black and white is really easy. Plus also, look how much grain is in here. If you've ever colored digitally, any of you, you can't use the magic wand on this very easily. This is a little bit more time consuming to color. It also means that I've determined the value of a lot of the areas. I've determined where the lighting is in ways that maybe a colorist would normally do. But now the colorist doesn't get to do that. I already made those decisions. Look at how much lighting is dictated on the head of, I think this is Axonn here. So I spring this all up because, and I have to say this, there were only a few things I really wanted to say tonight definitively, and this is one of them. Alex Blayart is the gentleman who colored Lego Bionicle for me. And I have to tell you in complete honesty, I did not think he did a very good job on my colors. And as the book went on, I thought he got a little bit better, but wasn't as good as I'd like him to be. And then here's the horrible thing, and this is the thing I really want to say. After Bionicle, I drew more, I colored more, I did more, I worked on my craft, I got better, and I looked back on Bionicle years later and I realized that I was wrong. He did a wonderful job. Mm-hmm. He was a fantastic colorist, and I really have to say that. I was frustrated because a lot of my coloring was really destructive. I destroyed a lot of the lines. I had no problem obliterating a lot of the line work, and he was very respectful to what I did. He was smart. He made smart choices. He made clear choices. And it's a funny thing because it's been happening to me now for like 15 years solid. All I have to do is wait a few years. I've worked on my coloring. I've gotten better at it. I go back and I look to see what he did. And however good I thought he was better. And in 2 years, I'll look again and I'll realize he's even better than I thought. Alex, you did an awesome job on this book, and I really, really mean it. And I learned a lot from you. And thanks for making me look good. I really, really mean that.
Okay, so just so you know, it's 8:44. So if you want to start drawing now,
is it really that late?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Sarah Cameron and Jonathan Crissetti are so excited about this show. By the way.
Well, let me show a few little quick odds and ends before we dive into this, because I got to show you this.
Let me ask a couple of these questions too. Armin Reeves from Twitch asks, "Did you know how impactful Matoro's death would be to longtime fans?"
Yes and no. So here's the story I have to tell on this. And I'm going to try to go through this quickly. But when I got this job, the first thing I did was I started looking at all the toys. You know, I didn't have Axonn yet, but they sent me some of them, and I played with them. And by the way, Lego asked me, they said, "Do you want us to build the toys, or do you want to build them yourself?" And I said, "Ooh, but send them to me unbuilt. I'll build them." And then I realized if I build them wrong, then I'll draw them wrong. And I can't have that. So I said, no, send them to me already built. But when they arrived here, I mean, the first thing I did, I hope you guys think this is cool, because this was the way to approach this in my mind. I had to play with them. I had to see what they do. You know, what I think to be good at this stuff, you have to get it. You have to know what makes it fun and makes it interesting. So I took some of them apart. I took good photos so I could get them back. You know, I saw how they could, you know, whatever they could do, what you could make out of them. I read a little bit about how the characters behaved, and I just kind of tried to imagine their world. But I really tried to do it strictly through the toys, not through the existing comic books. But I remember, because I wasn't interested in drawing robots per se, I felt like it wasn't quite clicking for me. And so I remember I called my mom and I said, "I got this great job. I'm trying to figure out a way to connect with it." And my mom is so cool in that she said, "Just think of them all as Micronauts," which is this comic book right here. Now, Micronauts is a toy line that was made by Mego when I was about 7 years old. Here's one of their toys called the Acroyer. And this is what Acroyer looks like, okay? And I hope you can make out the figure there. Here is the Acroyer figure in all gold. Typically, he was red and white. But Axonn here is what 7-year-olds saw when I was working on Bionicle. When I was 7 years old, this is what I saw. Bionicles didn't exist, but this was a toy that I loved. And it dawned on me that the way I felt about this when I was 7 years old was how 7-year-olds would feel about what I was doing. So what I thought of was right away, I looked up Michael Golden. Michael Golden, if you don't know, is the artist of Micronauts. This is the guy who drew the comic book of the toy that I loved when I was 7. I said, oh my gosh, I'm going to be walking in the footsteps of my hero. So I went to a comic book convention, and I had to track him down, and I just basically said, help me, Obi-Wan, you're my only hope. You've already done this. You did this. Tell me, I'm working on this toy line. You worked on this famous toy line. Tell me what to do. Give me some sage advice. And he gave me the best advice. And I got this advice just as I was starting the job. And he said, you need to find a way to love it. And I thought, well, that doesn't help very much. And he said, no, find a way to make it your own. He said, you're going to be talking about this stuff for the rest of your life. You're probably going to be drawing it for the rest of your life. He said, you know, find a way to engage with it and take it all in, because it's not going to go away. And it was a funny thing, because when I got the job, I tried to remind myself, it was my big breakthrough in comics, but I might have it for a year. I might have it for 2 years. I could have it for 5 years, but I won't have it for forever. And so this all kind of lined up. So when somebody asked me, what would it, how would I know what it would affect a 7-year-old when Motoro dies? I know, because I know what happens when Baron Karza dies in issue 12 of the Micronauts. Yeah. I know how that made me feel. Spoiler for everybody. Yeah. But that was really cool, because I felt that I got to pass it on, pay it forward the way it had been given to me. If I mean something to you guys, I'm really flattered. I know what that looks like, because every time I see Michael Golden, I just think, oh, only I could draw Baron Karza the way he did. Before I dive in and do some drawing, I want to show you guys a few quick little things. I have had some awesome fans. This is a piece of art that a young young Bionicle fan gave me at a comic book convention. I think this is actually drawn by Wyatt Denton, who is the editor of Shannon Denton, who did a lot of work for IDW Comics. Wow. He made these for me. I had another fan who came to see me and made this, which was he knew that Axonn was my favorite, and this was an Axonn necklace that he made that was presented to me by Logan on April 23rd, 2010. And I mean it. I love this stuff, and I'm really flattered that I can inspire people to want to do this stuff. So, oh, I forgot I do have it. Yay, this is great. Here's a Xerox, a full-size Xerox of the pencils for that page that I showed you. So typically, if I made a page in Bionicle, this is how much I would pencil it, and this is what it would look like in its first stage. I would then ink it, and here's what it looks like after all the inking. And you can see I kept in some of the textures and the grays, but a lot of what I do and a lot of what makes my work mine really comes out in the inking. I don't have Xeroxes of all these, but you can see there's a shadow here on this Matoran. That didn't make it through. I moved where the reflection is a little bit. So there's some spontaneity that happens from this point to this point. And then obviously Alex got a hold of it and he colored it and he made it his own. Okay, I'm about to dive in and draw, but I want to show you a few last little things first. Okay. So I was teasing this earlier. If you guys are diehards of this stuff, I should let you know that I went through and I have some of the Bionicle comic books. And if you guys are interested in these, I have a small set that I have for sale. Where is the last one? I got too many stacks going on here. So I think you're going to get 4, 5, 3, 4, 5. Where's 3? There it is. 3, 4, 5. I have 9 and 11. I don't have very many of these, but I have some sets. And if you guys would like some of these, they are all nice copies. I hope you guys can see from the reflections that the corners and everything are all really crisp. But I'm selling a set of these. Obviously, they're the original comics from way back when. It is $50 for a set. All of them come signed. Each one is going to come with a certificate of authenticity, which I will sign and date as August 10th, Bionicle Day. And so if you want one of those or want one of these sets, write us a private message on Facebook, and we will tell you how to bill us, and we'll send these out to you, signed and everything.
For those who are watching on Twitch, is this also on your website?
This is on my website, yeah. If you go to stuartsayger.com, my wife will put that in there. And I know this is turning into a little bit of an ad, but I will tell you this. If you like this stuff, I also have on there a Transformers exclusive variant that I've made. It's not Bionicle, but it's related. And there's a sound wave that connects to it. They also have Optimus and Megatron on the back. And then if you're really diehard, remember I said I was a Micronauts fan? I got to do my own Micronauts cover. This was an exclusive. And then the only other toy robot, which I really wanted from when I was young, was Rom, and I got to draw that as well.
That's
You
pretty
guys have no
awesome.
idea how cool it is to love these things when you're 7 years old and then get paid to draw them as an adult. It's really cool. So I do know what it's like to have those characters die. Anyway, if you want a set of these, I have 3, 4, 5, 9, and 11. I have a couple sets of each. Shipping on these in the United States is going to be about $5. If you want to go internationally, it should be $25. But write us a message, and or you can buy them through my website. Okay, let's do some drawing.
Okay. Well, you pull that out. Let me ask you some of these other things
Please do.
that have come in. So I'm gonna make sure I get all of them. I'm a Tron on Twitch says, did you ever make your own Bionicle MOC, or did you ever play with the official sets?
So I took them apart a couple times. I know there were people who like to crash Axonn and Piraka together and came up with some pretty good mashups. And I did a little bit of that, but I got to tell you, I was always terrified that I wasn't going to be able to get them back together the way they're supposed to. My biggest fear would be that someone at, Greg Farsty or somebody would say, you got the wrong head, not even the wrong head. I'd get the wrong kneecap on somebody. Yeah. I remember I dropped one of them just as I got it, like Lego shipped them to me built, but it came out of the box. One time I dropped one, and one time they were in pieces, and I just said, like,
oh, what do I do?
What do I do? I mean, I can guess how it goes back together, but you never really get it quite right. I will tell you this, and Aili knows this about me. When I was little, before there was Bionicle, I was a big Technics builder, and so I had some of the space sets, and I had some of the Technics. And when Bionicle arrived, and believe me, the first set of Bionicles I really had was the Piraka from the 2005-2006 set I worked on that had the brick with the glowing eye. And I got to tell you, I felt so cheated because that was the coolest Lego brick of them all. And that did not exist when I was 12 years old.
Yeah.
I really wish I could have had that. Today, if I were going to do something with the Bionicles, I'd be really tempted to mix and match some of the pieces with some of the Technics. I would love to be able to make a scaled up Axonn, where he got to have like some gears and things that really worked. You know how they're like bigger scales of Millennium Falcon? I'd love to scale him up. He would be so much fun. Oh, by the way, at San Diego, if you guys have the cover to Lego Bionicle 0, I've shown it here 3 or 4 times, but I've lost it. This thing, inside it, it's got this fold-out poster. They made a statue of this poster for the San Diego Comic-Con. I've got a photo of me standing with it. It was about 20 feet tall. And I just walked in the door and I saw it and I thought, wow, you've done something. Okay, so this is fun as well. One of the interesting things about me working on this comic for Lego was, according to the contract with DC, I absolutely positively had to draw it on DC board. That is to say, paper supplied by DC Comics. Now, the thing that was tricky, if you guys have never seen some of this before, you see it's got blue printed on it. This is called non-photo blue. It's a particular shade of blue. And what it basically is that if I were drawing this in black and white, you can photograph this with a black and white camera and the blue will disappear. It looks like white, which is fine, but that only works if you draw in strict black and white. And as you've seen, I've got a lot more like smudgy, smeary grays. And so that was kind of a problem because we had signed the contracts and these arrived. And I said, well, I can draw on my own paper, can't I? And they said, no. It's got to be on this. And I explained that I was either going to have to draw it smaller inside this other box or else I couldn't use these. And then it dawned on me. I just said, well, can I just draw them on the back? It didn't say I had to draw it on the front. And they said, yeah, that'll work. So that's how we got around that. So these were actually 2 unused boards that DC sent me back from Bionicle. I saved them for a day like this. So I'm going to try to draw it using the old techniques and pens that I used, and I'm going to draw it on the old paper to do it right. So how's that?
Yes. Awesome.
And the only thing that is different this time that I can think of right away is that Axonn used to have a little tag around his neck with his name on him. And I know this sounds kind of dumb, but I put a little tag on all of them with their names. And the biggest reason why I did that was it was just too easy to do something wrong.
Yeah.
I knew who they all were,
Yeah.
but if I ever doubted myself,
it's got to be foolproof. You know, I think people who don't draw don't understand how easy it is to make giant mistakes that you don't notice, because your brain is thinking about the composition on the page, the line weight, all of those things. So like when I draw, I have to have somebody proofread my text if there's any text in it, because my brain can't process a spelling error, even if
I'm the exact same way.
Yeah. So you have to make it foolproof as you're doing it.
And there was one in year 2 that I drew where I know I drew something happened where I drew parts of the figures wrong. Like the bottom half of the anatomy was right and the top half was wrong or something like that. There was some sort of mix up where the pieces came apart or something, and they caught it, thankfully. But I also color coded them, so I knew who the Toa were and who the Piraka were, and I never should have needed that. But I will tell you, the issue 5 that introduced Axonn and Fenrak, I had a script and there was no toy. The toy didn't exist. I mean, did not exist. There wasn't one on the planet. It hadn't been made yet, but we were coming up close on the deadline. And I remember talking to the editors, like, what are we going to do? You know, if I don't get it drawn on time, they don't get it printed on time, it doesn't get mailed out on time, everything fails. And I was told, you know, leave blank spots in the panels for when the toys come. And I said, I can do that, but here's the funny thing. You know, they aren't all humanoid and they aren't all the same size. You know, it's not like I'm drawing a new member of the Justice League and he's going to have a human face and a human body. You know, there were Bionicles that looked kind of more like crabs. I had no idea what to expect. So I did the best job I could, and this is kind of exciting. I finally got, I think at this point they gave me a phone call, and they only give you a phone call if it's desperate. But they said, okay, we got to have the book done in 2 days. And I said, okay. And they said, there's one Axonn and Fenrak in the world. And I said, okay. And they said, it's in, where's Lego? Switzerland? Where is it? I can't remember. Not Switzerland.
Denmark. Yeah.
It's in Denmark. And I said, okay. And they said, they're going to overnight FedEx it to you. You have to drive out to the airport. You've got to bring your ID and you're going to sign for this thing. And you're going to receive the only one that exists in the world. And I said, okay, well, what's it look like? And they said, we don't know. Because I was talking to Lego USA. They said, we really don't know. We haven't seen it. And I said, okay. And they said, but bring your ID. And they had me sign a contract that said that I wouldn't photograph it. I wouldn't show it. I wouldn't put it on the internet. I wouldn't anything. So we're up against this tight deadline. I've been up all night. I raced to the airport. It arrives. They hand me this box. I sign everything. And I was going back home and I broke the contract. It took me about 10 minutes to violate the contract. And here's what happened. I said, you know what? I'm going to stop and I'm going to get breakfast. And I went to this little restaurant that's not far from where I live. It was on the way home. And I ordered an omelet and I'm sitting there. I'm going to have breakfast for one at, you know, about 9 in the morning or something like that. I'd been up all night. And across the way from me, I love telling this story. There was these 2 mothers with their 2 sons who looked like they were about 8 and 10 years old, and they were bored out of their minds. They just were ready to go home, and there was nothing they could do. And I looked down, and I knew I had that box that I hadn't opened. It was a pretty good sized box. So I took my little butter knife and I cut it open. And if you've never seen Axonn and Fenrak, it's a really terrifying robot like this with these big teeth and a cape, and he is standing on a giant 4-legged spider that he's holding by chains. And it is one of the coolest Lego Bionicle sets by far. If you guys are disagreeing with me, I don't know why, because I think it's awesome. And I opened it up and there it was magically just built and grinning back at me. And I looked at those kids and I didn't say anything to them. I just picked it up. I'm not supposed to let anybody see it. And I just put it on the table, kind of like that. And I sort of like watched out of the corner of my eye to see the kids. And one of them finally saw it. And boy, he woke up and he was just leering, trying to get a good look at this thing. And he like did the, hey fellas, like nudged his friend, and, look at that. And they looked at it and they're like, whoa, you know, and they knew it was a Bionicle, but they had never seen it. And then it was so cool because I picked it up back up. They got to look at it for about 5 seconds. And I said, not even in the stores yet. And I pulled it all up. And I just said that to him and that was it. Looked away and my food came and I ate. And I don't know who those 2 kids are, but I hope they remember it. And I hope they went to Toys R Us or wherever else. And, you know, 4 or 5 months later, finally got to see it. But a period in time where I had the only one. Well, I've got the first one ever made.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So it's pretty cool.
So you should start drawing, but then ASP3 Gamer, oh, that's probably As Pie Gamer, I get it, from Twitch says, which villain from Sayger's run on the comics was his favorite to draw?
Without a doubt, it was Hakan. He was the first one I drew. I liked the Pirakas. That light bulb in the head was just too cool. I fell in love with that right off the bat. I liked Khan because he was red, and that's a little unfair because you want it to have more to do with personality. But they listed that he was also the bully. He was somehow, when I pulled him out of the box, I looked at all their heads and their facial features and just sort of what made them unique. Each one was a little different, and I just responded to him right off the bat. And so, at least in the first issue or so, when you see group shots of the Piraka, I kind of put Hakan up in front because I just liked him. Zaktan was really pretty cool. I think I want to make this bigger. I know I just started, but I'm diving right in. By the way, also the paper that I draw on is a vellum finish. It's really hard to see here, but it's got a grit to it. And so by contract of me having to do this on DC board, they had to send me the paper. I'd have to call them up and say, hey, I need some more paper. And I couldn't ask for too much. You know, I have a couple extra sheets, but I never had enough to where I felt like I could just kind of cut loose. You know, if I needed 12 pages to draw an issue, they might send me 20. But there were times where I would get so rambunctious and I didn't like something, I would cut out a panel and glue it in or change what I had done. But what was funny was they kept sending me the wrong paper. And the reason they sent me the wrong paper is that the vellum paper has got a rougher finish on it. And I remember every time I'd ask them, I said, hey, can you guys send me the paper? And they'd say, yeah, we'll send you more paper. And I'd say, wait before you hang up. And they'd say, what is it? I said, will you send me the vellum finish, which was the rougher finish? And they'd say, oh, okay. And then I remember one time I asked for it, and the person who I was speaking to said, oh yeah, you're the guy who wants the rough stuff. And I said, what does that mean? And he said, most people don't draw on the rough paper anymore. And I said, nobody? Really? And they said, just the old artists, like the old guys who've been doing it a long time. And I kind of laughed at that. I thought, well, but I liked it because by virtue of it being a little bit rougher, it would hold ink differently. It already had its own texture a little bit. And I could layer inks and paints on top of it a little bit more. And if you guys see me draw other things, you know that I really can just put a lot on the page.
Yeah. So earlier you were talking about, you told us the story of how you got onto the run of Bionicle, and then you told us about how you stopped doing a run of Bionicle. Can you tell us how you got back on a few years later?
Yeah, so a lot of people don't know about this. So after I did Bionicle for 2 years, there was a gap where I was away from it. If you guys are completists, you got to get a copy of this. Paper Cuts reprinted all the Bionicle comic books, including mine. And then for volume 8, they have new material. And so they called me up and brought me back. And a lot of you, if you had the subscription to the Lego fanzine but didn't buy this, the Paper Cuts edition, you never saw these other Bionicle pages that I drew. This is the last Bionicle I worked on, and it was kind of a nice return to old favorites. I think I had a different colorist on it, so it looks a little bit different. But I really didn't think I'd ever get to do it again. And they said, yeah, you can. But here's the funny thing. They needed it pretty quickly. And I think one of the reasons they went to me is because the fans knew me and I knew what I was doing. But the book was smaller. You can see this isn't full comic book size. And so I remember saying, okay, look, if it's smaller, I'm not going to draw a whole bunch of tiny panels. I said, I think we need to pace this a little bit differently. I said, let's try to keep it to where it's only 3 panels per page. And so we did, because a couple of my favorite tools to work with when I draw are my fingers. I'll actually put my ink in the fingers, and to work really small, you just kind of can't do that. But this was the last go around. And so the actual pages for these are also smaller. Instead of being 11 by 17 like what I'm drawing on here, I think they were, I don't remember, 10 by 14 or something. But it's kind of great because it just kind of felt like coming home.
Yeah.
It was, they were all different characters, so they had to get me some new toys. But it was fun. And I think the story showed a lot of things that I didn't get to experience in the first 2 years I did. Like, I never got to draw anything in an ice field like this. I think this storyline actually had fewer characters, so I got to focus on a tighter story instead of jumping around between so many different characters.
So Jonathan Crissetti's asking for some tips on how to draw Bionicles well. What are your tips or tricks that you evolved over time? Because they're pretty technical.
They are. So I would say, see how I'm drawing him pretty quickly and just sort of blocking him out. Like, I'm going to draw this arm back here right now, and you can see how much there is there. When I first draw it, I just basically say, this is the space it occupies. That's about it. I mean, it's got two big pieces, and then they, with the ball and socket that connects them, and then everything else is kind of piled on top of it. And so if you've ever seen those drawing books where they say, draw a circle and put a circle next to it and turn that into a box and build it up, that's really what we're doing here. I talked to Tom Grinberg, the person who also tried out for the Bionicle job and didn't get it. He told me, he said, you know, he wanted the job and he was also relieved when he didn't get it. He was just kind of joking. And he said, drawing the Bionicle was like drawing a car engine every day.
Yeah.
You know, and it except it had to be alive. And I think that's the trick. The other thing I would tell everybody, if you really want to get the stuff right, don't worry about getting it perfect. Well, this is my approach. The thing needs to be lively. If you're going to worry about getting every little nook and cranny in on this axe, for some people, that's what's most important to them. For me, what's most important is capturing the feel and the essence of the character. Yeah, I need the head to be really recognizable. I need to get that pretty spot on. But I think, like, if I didn't have quite as many ridges on this leg, that wouldn't bother me as much. I think it would have bothered Lego. Lego would have said, no, get those right. But I was always willing to fudge a little bit. If you look at the Axonn's figure here, he gets a little thin in this area here. You know, to really add life to him, give him proportions a little bit more like a human. So I would probably elongate this just a little bit because a human's torso is a little bit longer. And just by doing that, your brain clicks over. It allows you to read the figure and have the movements and expressions it has. Oh, you just changed your screen.
I did. I thought we should zoom in on
on
what you're drawing.
Yeah, that's a good idea. She's the best. Here's another great thing you can do to help you with drawing Bionicles. I forgot about this. Take the piece off you need to draw most. You know, I don't need to hold all of him to get this head right.
As long as you know where that piece goes when you're done.
Yeah. The other thing I would say is, don't worry too much about your critics. I have found out through the years, I am either everyone's favorite or least favorite Bionicle artist.
There's not a lot of in between in that.
one or the other.
Very true. So tell us the exact information on that paper cuts issue again, so that David Clank can find it.
The new material one is volume 8. So the other volumes, I think, reprint the other, they reprint material that's come out, but this one's got new material. There's a good shot of the ISBN, if that helps. How's that?
Yeah, that's good.
And
what's the actual title on the book itself?
Legends of Bara Magna. There's the important part right there.
Yeah.
But I will tell you as well, here's the other funny thing that's tricky about the Bionicles. Axonn happens to have, I think, the hardest head of all of them to draw, because you tend to think it's a sphere and you change the angles on it and you realize it's not a proper sphere. I can't just draw a sphere because it's a little elongated. And so to make it look round but get these good cutouts is hard. It was one of the things that I really struggled with. Because here's the other thing. Do you guys know that the MTV had the cartoon Beavis and Butthead? So that thing was kind of a surprise hit, and at one point they decided to make toys out of them. Well, that's what happens a lot of times with successful TV shows and cartoons. The problem is the models sheets that they had developed don't work as 3D objects. So when it came time to make the toys, they had to decide, were we going to build it to best work on this shot or that shot, because they had never been 3D objects before. They had to sort of pick. Let's put this back on.
Okay, have you ever heard the Yo-Yo Piraka rap?
No, but I'm ready. Let's have it.
Egan, if you know it, or
Egan would
if
know
you can
it.
send us a link, do it, because we don't know it.
Okay. Now, truth be told, I'm working through this a little bit faster than I normally would have when I was working on the toy, but part of it is I haven't had a good refresher yet. I'm sort of reconnecting with it. Have to figure out how I did it. A lot of that which I draw in comics these days, they're, right now I'm drawing Kiss, the rock and roll band. And I'm also doing Army of Darkness covers for Dynamite. And they are human, so I kind of can just sort of draw a character I know and then sort of put on the different accoutrements, the details to make it a specific character. One thing I always say, if you want to draw Bionicles well, this is a great thing you can do. Think about their pieces in terms of layers. So we've got a ball and socket joint back here on Axonn, and this is sort of his skull, we'll call it that, and then his mask is on front of it. That protrudes awfully far out. You can see how much space there is under him and how much his chest sticks out. So his chest and his face are kind of on the same level, but all this other mechanism down here, which you can see is further back, which I've communicated here, but when you really want a great sense of distance, have this head be on one level, have this chest be on another level, and then tell yourself that a lot of these items that are further back, they're going to largely be silhouette. They're going to be under the shadow of these other pieces. A great way to create dramatic lighting is have some pieces be really bright, well lit, and other pieces be really dark. And when you alternate those two, it gives you a really great sense of depth. This is my go-to trick on all this stuff.
A couple of people are asking about commissions and things like that.
Yes.
How do people do that with you?
Well, so the dangerous thing is at the moment my commission list happens to be closed, and it's because I'm chasing a couple deadlines. But there are some ways around that. If you happen to go to one of the conventions that I'm attending, I always am happy to draw in person. So if you go to my website, I know it lists some shows I'm going to. I'm going to the Cincinnati Comic-Con, going to the Grand Rapids show. Where else am I going? I'm doing a comic book store signing tomorrow. If you guys happen to be near Indianapolis, you can get a piece from me tomorrow at Comic Book University. I'm also, if you go to my website, stuartsayger.com, you can see a lot of the events I'm going to. I'll bet I see Steve at Grand Rapids.
Yes, we've got Lexington coming up too.
Oh, I forgot about Lexington's great too.
So the easiest way to do this is to find Stuart at a show and talk to him. Several people have asked about, can they bring things for you to sign or maybe do a remark on?
Yep. Yeah, I do all that.
Maybe
and I love it.
the instructions to one of these Bionicles.
Oh, I hadn't thought about that. That
Yeah.
sounds pretty cool. The other thing you should also do before you draw the stuff is loosen up first, man. Now, I have got a long ways to go on this Axonn, but I'm not going to belabor this and get every detail down. Why? Because you want to see it come together. So much of the what makes these great is in the inking.
Stephen Wirt says, I'm looking forward to you returning to Emerald City Comic Con one day. And I said, both we and Sarah Cameron are with you on that.
So I've got his face a little bit wonky and out of order. And so what you're supposed to do is erase it and fix it. But guess what? we're just going to ink it. And the reason we're going to ink it
Living dangerously.
is because you want to see how I do these things. So
Yeah.
while the drawing, I do actually think it's going to come out quite good. It's going to be a little bit looser than how I might have otherwise done it, but I'm going to do some nice lighting things, which will make it all kind of come together. So for those who are interested, this is a Tombow pen that I like to use. It's got a flexi tip. It gives me a lot of variety in my line weights. You can see how it will start off kind of dark and then fade to light. So that's kind of a nice little way to add some depth in on these. This is the hardest part to draw. This part of his chest that comes in front of the other is really awkward. I remember some of this is coming back to me from when I worked on them. It's really curious. Actually, go ahead.
JD Neer asks, how long did the first issue take you to draw, or issue 1?
So issue 1 is the good question. Issue 0 came before it, but issue 0 was a breeze because it didn't have it was only a poster, right? There was very little I had to do. So here's what is fascinating about this. I think Lego was figuring out how they were going to update the characters and redesign the comic book, and they came up with a new title. It wasn't just Lego, it was Lego Bionicle. So they had a couple things they had to sort of sort out. But in the meantime, they were also on a publishing schedule, and I don't know for sure, but I think they were on a contract with DC Comics to make the Lego comic book. Well, if they haven't settled on some of the things like the title of the comic yet, it's kind of hard to make the comic book if you haven't solved some of the things. So the first issue was the 0 issue, which was just the cover and the poster. But I think what had happened is they'd already worked out a contract with DC for something like 6 12-page comics. Well, the first one, as I said,
excuse us while the prisoner makes a.
So the first one was just a cover and a poster. So I think what they did was, to make the contract work, they took all the pages that would have appeared in issue 1, issue 0, and they added them to issue 1. So if you're wondering why issue 1 is double sized, it's to make the 2 issues average out.
Oh.
So what was funny was, you'll recall I told Jay, the editors, like, this is my first book. So the first issue I had to work on was issue 0. So all I had to do was a cover and poster, and I thought, oh, thank goodness, I can start off nice and easy. I didn't know that they had that contract going on and they were going to have to zero that out. So after I get the first one done, he calls me up and he says, oh, by the way, the first issue is going to be double sized, which I was already slightly panicked just by having to draw the comic in the first place. But to know it's double sized, I was in extra panic. So
double panic.
This sounds kind of weird, but this is the honest truth. I didn't know for sure I could do it. I knew that I was supposed to be able to do it. I knew that I'd never done anything this large. I had self-published Shiver in the Dark, but it was 20 pages and I had a year to do it. I now had a comic book that I had to draw in 60 days. Most people draw a standard size comic book in 30 days. So certainly I can do it in 60 days, right? Except I'd never done it. So this was kind of trial by fire for me. And so what I did, this sounds kind of dumb, was I just told myself, it's like, I don't believe in the phrase failure is not an option. Yeah. But I gave myself this idea of failure is not an option today.
Yeah.
And what that meant was just draw today. Draw as much as you can today. You know, do some math. If you have 60 pages, 60 days to draw 30 pages, you got to do one every 2 days.
Right.
And I just told myself, start and stay ahead of the curve.
Right. And
don't look up. Just, did you get 1 page done every 2 days? And actually, I think I got it done with about five days to spare or something like that, maybe even more. But I did get off to a big early lead. I remember I was terrified, and I did something like 10 pages in a week.
Wow. And
I really just kind of felt like you can't screw it up. And here's the other thing. I didn't know, I had done 1 sample page. That doesn't mean that they were going to like the actual pages. I could have turned in things and they could have said, yeah, this isn't what we thought we were getting. So, thanks, but no thanks. Or maybe I was going to have a ton of corrections. But the first issue, that first double-sized issue, worked out really well. I did feel that I was getting a better sense of how to connect with the characters and how to communicate with the editor, and everybody was just kind of pulling together. I'll tell you this too. I went to DC Comics, I think I told you, where I saw some of the other samples, and they treated me like a king when I walked in there, and I was really surprised. And one of the things that dawned on me was, I think Lego wasn't sure they were going to continue Lego Bionicle as a comic book, and Lego liked my samples well enough that they did. So I think in DC's eyes, I was the guy who allowed them to keep the job they wanted. And then again, Jay Gardner really was the right editor for me. I mean,
you said DC. Did you mean Marvel?
No.
DC. Okay.
Yeah, DC published this.
Gotcha.
So they gave me the. They got to keep the job. And here's the thing: they also told me this, that this was actually, by the way, some of this stuff is not going to be exact. This is where I get into trouble drawing Bionicle. I get some of it close. I sort of make up some of it and say, I think this kind of looks like this. But it's never spot on. But DC told me, they said, oh, by the way, this book is going to be translated to, I think they said like 8 total languages, and then it was going to be the largest circulated comic in the world. At one point, I was at the San Diego Comic-Con, and I met these 2 German men who were in publishing, and they said, oh, we publish Bionicle. And I thought, I have no idea what you're talking about. And they pulled out and they showed me the German issue.
Oh, wow.
And I said, wow. And so I think they actually, I'm not positive, so don't quote me on this, I think there was one issue that came out in Germany before it came out in the United States.
Wow.
Maybe only like a week or something like that. Like, he showed it to me and I said, I haven't even seen this yet. And while we're on the subject, one of the things that really made Bionicle really cool is if you look at the lettering in it. Oh, I don't have one that's open handy. I had them, I've moved them all. If you look at the lettering in it, it's a slightly different font than you see on a lot of comic books. And the reason it was DC told me that they were looking for a font that had all the characters needed to be translated into German, into French, into Italian, into Russian, into Chinese, into Japanese. And so they found one font that worked pretty well, but it wasn't a commonly used font. You never think of those things. Yeah. But it makes total sense. It really was a big job.
So this is a great segue. LD asks, you said you first got into comics with your own self-published work that I look forward to checking out sometime now.
I like that answer.
Which you both wrote and drew. How different was it adjusting to working on comics from someone else's scripts?
That wasn't as hard for me as it could have been, in that I grew up working for my college newspaper. So I knew a lot of kids who took art in college and took studio classes. But I always came to art from a journalistic background, like working for the newspaper. In college, I would have an editor leave me a voice message on my answering machine saying, hey, I need 3 illustrations for next week's or for tomorrow's newspaper. I need a 2-column drawing of 2 kids waiting for a bus. It's got to be 7 inches tall. They got to be in the rain. I said, make one a guy and one a girl, and, make different body types and different ethnicities, or, they may have said they might have needed something specific. They might have said, this relates to foreign exchange programs. So we need, you never know, but it was always given to you on short order. And I always had to do it the way they wanted it. If someone else had written a story and my piece had to fit something that already existed. I think for me, the hard part was doing the other end of the equation. How hard was it to make a comic book when I was in complete control? On Shiver in the Dark, I got to do everything, but I was also responsible for everything. If there was something that didn't work, it was absolutely on me. I couldn't hide and say, oh, well, that's what the person wrote. That kind of freedom was something that was a little bit new to me. It was great. By the way, I don't know if I told you this rougher paper, it destroys your pens in a hurry. I forgot about that. So here's where I usually would make my money on Bionicle, where if there was something that I did that was different than a lot of other people, this is it. So a lot of people who would have drawn Axonn would have worked it up to about this point here. We've got the framework of the head. Okay, there's some extra lines I can add in, like details here for this eye slot. or a little bit of a lip right there. He's got a ridge that runs up here. And I can add these in, but these are all form. None of this really speaks to the lighting of the character. Okay, so what I've done in here is I've put in these dark areas. I'm starting to dictate the areas that are in light and that are in dark. I think some of the other artists who may have drawn Bionicle, they let the colorists decide where the light source was and where it wasn't, and kind of got out of the way. I like to decide all that myself. You know, if I've got a light source coming here and this is the part that first gets to be in shadow, there's a secondary light source over here. If I do that here, that has to make sense on the rest of this. So I have to continue sort of these choices for light and dark. If I've got a light source here, then that means this his head fin has to be in shade. This will be in shade. That, all of that. This whole dark side there has to be in shade. This recess here has to be in shade, shadow. And you would want to put a bunch of black down the middle of somebody's face like that, but if you do it right, that's what gives it all of its volume.
Marcus Rose says, you've got me and 100+ fans watching on Twitch for Bio Day. Thank you for all you've done to make our childhood imaginations come true.
What was the count?
100+.
Love it.
Twitch.
I'm delighted. Thanks, you guys. By the way, if you don't know, I do a live Facebook show every other Thursday, excuse me, at 8 p.m. Eastern USA time. And I always talk about something in the history of comics. I always do live drawing in the show very similar to this. And so if you want to tune in, I'll be back in 2 days.
Yeah, it's true.
This is amazing though, because this DC paper is rougher than the vellum I normally use. I don't know if you can see the marks I make them, but everything is going dry so quickly.
Yeah.
It is just sucking everything up. And I had forgotten about that.
So we should tell everybody, you're using a makeup sponge for one thing.
I am.
Which is a fun way to paint on these. And then you're using a big acrylic paint marker.
Yeah. I think it was Bionicle that I fell in love with using this marker, to be honest. I'd used it a little bit, but it really became kind of my go-to on Lego Bionicle. It'll lay down a lot of ink quickly, and knowing that I like to work so wet, it's kind of irreplaceable. Now, this might look kind of odd, but I have a secret weapon in that after I draw these things, I often come back and lay in white paint on top. So as you can see, I'm using big, broad marks to kind of chop in parts of the anatomy here. And it looks a little rough. And believe me, I know I drive some of the Bionicle fans nuts with how rough I make this. But if I do it this way, and I'm aware that I have white paint to put back on top of it, I can tighten it up. And it allows me to have some texture. If Steve Hartman is still watching, he's seen me draw often enough. He says, yeah, I know what he's going to do. Steve's a regular viewer on
Thursday nights,
on my Thursday show.
By the way, Steve Hartman said, over the last 18 months, he's accumulated 86 blank covers for a variety of comics. Do you think you'll have time at Grand Rapids to do all of them for him?
At Grand Rapids, no. But Steve and I have known each other for a long time. If he got 86 blanks out of me in the time we know each other, I would not be stunned.
Yeah. My response was, you'd have to go from worrying about drawing a page every 2 days to like a cover every 3 minutes at Grand Rapids if you took that project.
That's right.
Paul Justin says, this is inspiring to watch. I've never watched someone draw their art in depth before, and this truly makes me want to try Bionicle art again. Also, you're the first person involved with Bionicle I've had any interactions with. That's nice.
Well, I appreciate it. I'm really flattered that this is happening. I'm flattered. I'll tell you this, quite honestly, I'm flattered I get to be a part of this. This job meant so much to me when I got it, and I really did work hard to try to engage with it. You know, it sounds silly, but you know, everybody remembers their first gig, and this was a big one to hit the ground running on this. And I felt that I had big shoes to fill. And I'll tell you too, I didn't mention this, but I talk about it a lot when I after I got the job, I got hate mail.
Yeah.
I got
occasionally get it.
I got hate mail from a 5-year-old.
Yeah.
Anybody ever gotten that? I did. I got hate mail from a 5-year-old who wrote me, and all it said was, "You're doing it wrong."
Yeah.
And I love that. And there were many fans who grew up with Lee and Carlos, and they were great, and they really were great. And if you expected that and woke up one day and you got me, it'd be kind of hard. I don't know what to, compare that to. I kind of felt like I did good work, but it was sort of like, this is a little bit of an old reference, but I kind of felt like Steve Young having to play quarterback after Joe Montana. It's really hard to make anybody happy. But the funny thing about it was, I found out that there were a lot of people who really liked me, and that all the people who said they didn't like me, I won so many of them over.
Mm-hmm.
They got used to me, and they realized that the characters were different and the storyline was a little bit different. And you got to put a lot of that on Greg too. The tone of the book I felt changed. I went back and I saw the issues that had come out before me, and I really do think that Lego did some daring things to try to attract a different audience. And as I've gotten older, I've had more and more Lego fans tell me that they liked me when they were young, or that they didn't like me when they were young, but they've come around to it. Lego was looking for an art style that would appeal to an older fan, and I think they got that.
Mm-hmm.
How's this looking thus far, you guys?
Everybody's really just enjoying this come to life, and it really has started to jump off the page now.
So here's the thing. I want everybody to bear with me, because it's going to get a lot better very quickly. I like to do a lot of really fun things with lighting, and I'm at the point where a lot of the problems are getting solved. And I get to do, this is going to be his eyeball. It's got a lot of black in it, but I'm going to paint over that, and it's going to have some white. And believe me, this is going to have a life that in just a few minutes that it didn't have before. I brought my airbrush out, and I'm going to put some white highlights on it too, which is going to really make it come to life. See this part here? See this white inside his mouth? He's got this recessed mouth. That shouldn't be that white. Now, this is the problem that you have when you draw Bionicle, if you're me, okay? This is where Bionicle really gets hard. Because you want Lego to be happy. They want to see the detail of their figure. Because my light source is here, and this is basically a hole that goes down in there, that I would normally say, okay, all that has to be black, and I can make it black. But the more detail I take away, there were some fans who were really detail oriented, and they didn't like that. But at the same time, I don't think any light can get down in there. So what I would do sometimes is, instead of making it truly black, which I think it should be, I would just make it a little bit darker. Just kind of like that. Now, in this case, Lego's not editing me.
Right.
So I get to loose. So we're going to make it a flat black, because all of that is in shadow. And when I put the white in around the framework that sticks out, it's going to give us more dramatic lighting.
Yeah.
The same is kind of true over here. And this is where I said the thing can kind of come alive.
Whew.
Did it get dark?
Yes, I'm waiting to see everybody react here. Very cool. So, AG Bridgman asks, were you initially a fan of the product heading into working on the Ignition series?
I wasn't aware of it. Not really. I mean, I'd seen it in the toy aisle. I was not of the age where I played with a lot of toys, but, I'm a comic book person. I collect toys, and really cool ones you buy and you set up and you like to look at. I was a Lego fan growing up, so, I constantly looked at what they were doing, what Lego was doing, what was coming out. So when I was offered the job, I remember saying, "Oh, I know what those are." I mean, I didn't have any, but it wasn't like, someone had just spoken a foreign language to me. And that's when I said, "Well, I'll go to the store and I'll grab a few." And they said, "Please don't." That's when they really wanted me to just kind of do my own thing. And so there was this weird part where I was wrestling with trying to be a good artist who did my due diligence. You do your research, and also not you ever watch a movie sometimes and you figure there's going to be a twist and you spend so much time figuring out the twist that it keeps you from really enjoying it? Just, you don't have to figure it all out. Let them, let them do their thing. You do yours. Just be the viewer. That was hard for me to do, but I can tell you this. As I said, by being a little bit of a Bionic or a Lego fan growing up, I could see that their bricks, they had ball and socket joints. I mean, one of the coolest things that ever happened to me with Lego was shortly after I got this job. I wish I remember who it was. I had a friend who was a plastics engineer. And I remember him looking at these toys. Who was this? I don't remember. But he was so wowed by this ball and socket joint. And he said, you have no idea how hard that is to make. And I said, well, can't you just cast it? And he says, no. Because it's got to have enough friction to hold the position you put it in, and enough flexibility that they can pop into one another. And I said, okay, all right. He said, that requires a really high degree of tolerance in manufacturing. You can't, or a low degree of tolerance. You have to really manufacture things quite well. Your plastic has to be a specific type of plastic. In just a few minutes, this person had impressed upon me that these simple toys were not so simple. There was a lot of quality control that went into making them. Okay. I'm not far from having to add my white. Yes. So we're getting to the point where you guys are really going to like this piece a lot in a hurry, okay?
Grandpa Walker on Twitch says, as a fellow Axonn lover, the sort of dirty art, I'll call it, is so good looking. That mask especially is so beautifully done.
You just wait, I promise. Go ahead.
Yeah, that sums him up there.
So one of the things I'm doing, see this sort of rough, dark background I'm putting in back here? The reason I'm going to do that is I'm going to add some white highlights to him, and I really want him to shine and glow. And a trick that I always tell any young artist is, if you want anything to really look bright and glowing, the way to do that is to make the areas that aren't bright, make them really dark. It's just weird. The page is white. I can't make the page any whiter than it already is. There's nothing whiter than this white. So the way to make it glow is to make the other things dark. Now, the thing I keep doing is keep getting ink on the table, and my wife's not going to go for that.
That's your table, not my table.
It is my table. Okay. So he's looking pretty good. This right here is not bad, but it's a little bit of a harsh line. Let's break it up just a little.
Jonathan Crissetti says, hey, Stu, wanted to say this again, but thanks for being a big part of me and my brother's childhood. Forever in your debt for making Lego comic books kick ass.
I'm very flattered. Thank Toby Dutkowitz. That Lego went out on a limb bringing me in. I mean this. You guys are all being very sweet to me, but some of you guys watching, you hated me when you were young. I showed up following some really talented people. It took a while for me to figure out what I was doing, and for you to sort of decide that this was a different taste that you would go for. So there was a little while of having to win over acceptance from everybody. I want to say this too, and I'm so glad that I thought about saying this. I'm going to come back and work on this again here in just a second, and I'm about to add the white. It's going to come alive. But I got to talk about one thing on Lego, and this is really, really near and dear to me, okay? Because where are my loose Legos? Here it is, issue 11, the last one I worked on. Ooh. Prior to working for Paper Cuts. There was one thing that a lot of people I found out of the internet hated about this issue, and this was the only time I was hurt by the fans, and this was it.
Yeah.
And that was this panel right here. Okay. Yeah. So this is where I think this is Matoro, and Matoro puts on the mask of life here. So for years, 2 years worth of the storyline, everybody in Bionicle world was after getting this object here called the Mask of Life. As we saw, Axonn's face comes off, and a lot of different masks can go on these characters. But there was this big battle and chase to get this thing, and here it is. And Matoro finally has it, And this is the last issue of this year and last issue of my run. And right at the end, he puts it on and nobody knows what it's going to do. And so I show him putting the mask of life on over his face, and then I draw it here with it over his face. I know the internet called this the stick figure panel.
Yeah.
That they thought this was really stiff and they didn't like this. And the thing that I was going for here that is kind of high-minded, I studied art history in college, and I was a big fan of basically Renaissance through about 1850. I like a lot of the old masters. I cannot remember the name of this, but there is the very famous drawing where Leonardo da Vinci draws man as the machine, where his arms and legs are splayed out exactly like this, as though they're on a wheel, and you can see that they're hinged from the points of the hips and the joints. I thought how cool it would be if Leonardo presented the man more like a machine, that the mask of life would make the machine more like a man. That what does the mask of life do? I thought this would be a nice reference to sort of the two things coming together.
There's some folks on Twitch who get that it's the Vitruvian man.
That's what it's called,
totally are on it.
Right.
Javier 1054 says, I love that issue and also that panel, and I'll fight everyone who ever hated on this.
Okay, but they did hate on it, didn't they? They totally did. And I thought this was such a nice, cool thing. We met somebody only a couple weeks ago at an art fair that talked about this, and he said this was the panel that he loved, and he remembered it from his childhood. And it's a really good one, and I'm telling you, Greg did a wonderful job coloring it. He really, really did. But I think it was all set up from this moment. This was the trigger for me, and so I hope you guys can see there are other shots of the Mask of Life sort of zooming out here. It was sort of this all consciousness kind of panel, and it's a small panel, which is a shame because I really wish it could have been this big. I didn't pace it out. I got to stretch some panels, make them bigger, smaller as I felt they needed to be, but this is it. I know, I understand now. I can see the history of the mask, now how it must be used and what happens to the user. That's the text that goes with the scene.
Yeah.
And right after this thing came out, I know Lego decided to redesign the comic book again. They had new characters. They went with a different artist. And it happened all at once to about the time that I realized that my time on this series had wrapped up and this was not understood by the fans. And if you don't like it, that's fine. But if you understand what I'm going for, you might give me another shot.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think that as I've gotten older, I what I need to do is remember how the term Vitruvian man. I knew what it was. It doesn't always come back to me. So this is a white Presto pen, and I use this a lot. What it does is it puts out a white paint, and it was phenomenally valuable when drawing Lego because it allowed me to add highlights back in. And you're going to see what it can do to this piece in a hurry. By the way, this little cable back here, it's this guy. This needs to be a silhouette. I thought it was going to be fine to have light on it. It absolutely doesn't work. One of the things that's tricky about when you work in this high contrast style, where a lot of things are silhouetted, is you get one piece in a silhouette and you realize it works fine, and then you realize it screws up this other piece. This little column back here in light is fighting this area over here, so I've got a little too much light on that. Again, for an area to look light, the area next to it has to be dark, and you can't have everything light or everything dark. You have to pick. So watch how this is going to come together when I do my thing with this pen.
Dead Domain says, I was one of the kids who hated the artwork change. Having now gone through art classes and having just read the entire comic run as an adult, I appreciate the nuance of your work so much more, especially in this issue.
It's very kind of you to say that. I didn't know that was going to happen for some people. I was hoping it would. I think some of the credit on this really has to go to Lego. They gave me so much freedom, and they really, they were taking a real gamble. Like Bionicle was a winner. They could have kept it exactly the way it was, but none of the guys who came before me were allowed to make Axonn this dark. And I think that I had a couple panels where I really got to render him with this much atmosphere and darkness to him. So he is in a dramatic setting. So this is going to be a little bit of light and it's going to come down here.
Sedenbach pointed out you might want to explain why you erased before going back in with the white, so those aren't as production minded.
The biggest thing is that the white, if it goes over the pencil, it picks it up and turns the white gray. The other thing you can do, it can also kind of lock the gray down, the pencil down, whether you mean it to or not. This is really made to go over ink. Graphite can become, it can almost turn this into a gray paint, whether you mean it to or not. Now, one of the things I like to do here is I like to look closely at the character and find little bits where there's some highlights on and trim on him. Like I can cut this back in here and give it a little bit of shape. Right here, this is a great place for some light to sneak in. Gives it a little bit more depth.
Joey Haas is watching on Facebook. Yeah, hi Joey.
We know Joey quite well.
Yes, definitely the best Bionicle memory I have was meeting Stuart for the first time at Comic-Con.
Joey's been nice to me for years, and Joey draws some wonderful robots himself.
Yes.
Joey's made a few comic books, and I hope he continues. Joey's actually come to Comic Book in a Day, which is an event that Nickel Plate puts on, Nickel Plate Arts, which is an organization for which my wife is the director.
Yes.
And now is a good time for you to tell people about it, because I'm going to fire up the airbrush here in a second. Do you want to give them a
Oh yeah,
hustle?
sorry, I'm reading other comments here. But yes, on January 22nd of 2022, we will celebrate Comic Book in a Day again, where we invite everybody to come in and create their own comic book from scratch. We'll provide materials, we'll provide support. Stuart will be there and we'll give some guidance along with some other pros from the industry. It's such a neat opportunity to challenge yourself. Some of you on Twitch have been saying you wish you could get back into art again. You know, we'll give you 8 hours to spend on just all day on art. It happens at the Public Library in Fishers, Indiana. It's the Hamilton East Public Library in Fishers, Indiana. And we charge, we haven't set our price this year, but I think it's going to be $25 just to register. And we'll make sure you get some food as part of that if we do it in live. I know, yeah, if we do it in person. There should be an online option as well. So yeah, just check out nickelplatearts.org or follow Stuart on Facebook or Instagram, and he'll post about it when it's time to sign up.
It is a cool
really
event.
Fun day.
It's in January this year. January, what is it? Near the end of the month?
Yeah.
You know what it is.
Wait, say that again, sorry.
It's in January?
January 22nd, 2022. 1/22/22.
Let's see. So unfortunately, everything I have here is, wow, I'll use this. I loaded up my airbrush here with white paint. It's loaded. Let's add in a few little reflective bits here on Axonn that'll look really neat. So I'm never clean, and here's a good example of why.
Here's a good question. What was it like drawing everything set underwater in your second year for Bionicle?
You know what? The hardest part about it became the easiest part, and that was the bubbles. So I was trying to figure out how to add a lot of movement to everything, and I thought, oh, when you swing under your arm or something, there's gonna be a trail of bubbles. And so initially I drew all the bubbles. And what happened was the colorist had a great idea. He said, why don't you let me do all the bubbles? And I said, well, I don't mind drawing them. And he said, it is easier for me to add the bubbles digitally than it is for you to draw them. Now, the only thing about that was, on one hand, you're like, oh, that's easy, let him do it. But that also means he gets to decide where they go.
Yeah.
So there were some times where I would draw maybe one or two and sort of suggest where they were supposed to go and sort of dictate where he had to put the rest. But realistically, he didn't need that. He had a really good feel for the motion and what I was doing. I don't know a ton about Alex's artistic background. I don't know if he does a lot of drawing. Some colorists only color and they don't draw very much. I get the feeling Alex has to know how to draw. And that was a great advantage. I mean, it just made him better at his job because he understood what I was doing and why I was doing it and how it worked. Like I said, I don't think I gave Alex enough credit back then. I think he really was excellent. Okay, this is going to come together here in a hurry. This is a little bit too big right here. So I want there to be some highlights. But I always feel like if you want something to really look bright, you need a lot of dark around it. And then the bigger your white area is, the duller it is. If you really want something to really be bright, you put a lot of black around it and you make the area that's white be really small. Always works. And I'm going to tighten this up a little bit, make these shadows a little bit crisper. Let's see how this works.
LD noticed that your hands are rather inky.
Aren't they always?
And asked, how are your hands not permanently stained with ink?
I didn't say they weren't.
Yeah.
Aili will tell you they often are.
Yep. And so our light switches and our doorknobs and our sink faucets.
Yes, definitely the sink faucet, I can tell you that. The refrigerator door.
Yeah.
One of these days you have to say, I know you ate something, but did you get any drawing done?
Yeah.
You know. This is not far from being done. He's got a lot of nice look on him here. Now the funny thing is, I think my airbrush could stand to be cleaned.
Yeah. So everybody's asking, what's the future of this piece?
I don't know. I sell them from time to time. I might put it on my website or something. You guys like it? Does it look good?
Everyone wants it.
Well, I often have an art sale on my website or on my live feed. Maybe this will be offered there. I will tell you, when I make pieces like this, Bionicle I always charge a little bit more for than I do other things. Why? Because it's better. No, I do enjoy it, but it's usually a little bit harder. Technically, you got to spend more time mapping out all the pieces, making sure you get the detail right. I mean, I actually have to have a reference for it. There isn't a lot of that happens on other things I work on. I think when he is said and done, if I can tighten him up, he's probably going to be around a $500 piece. Yeah. And I think he'll be worth it.
Someone on Twitch wanted to ask, are there any particular favorite characters in the Underwater Arc 2007? That was the year he grew up with and was always his favorite.
You know, I didn't remember them as well. And this is the funny thing, I should have. I'm trying to remember who they all are. Let's see, here they all are. I'll tell you, they didn't get equal time. The thing what I remember I wrestled with a lot when I drew these were the characters that were black and were white, because they didn't have a color.
Okay. And
I couldn't have color reflect off of them. So like, I think, who is this? Is this No, I gotta remember his name. Who's the white one on this? I've forgotten. It's been so long. What's wrong with me? I used to know all of them.
They'll tell you.
They'll tell me.
I'm sure.
This guy, this green one, I always loved. These hoses and this canister in the back of the head, I thought was really cool. Some of it, when you came down to drawing them, it was Matoro.
That's
I got
what
it right.
saying, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, there it was. There it is. Oh, this guy, he was super cool. This red one, what was his name? He's probably my favorite of the villains. This white one, who was kind of like a stingray, I thought was always tricky to have him look very lively because his face was so far from being a conventional human.
Kongu.
Yep, Kongu. Oh, by the way, these are the ones I think I drew the wrong figures on these. We had to change these. I think this is a panel where I got busted and I actually accidentally drew the wrong ones.
And then Kalma too.
Okay, Kalma, that sounds right. You know, my thing was things like this were where I always felt were the trickiest. Like here's an underwater serpent sort of monster. This doesn't really exist. I got to just sort of make it up. But this is one of these instances where I thought in the Bionicle world, it'd be really easy to make this sort of sea monster be more bionic-like as well. Mm-hmm. But I always thought it was more scary and more interesting if the robots were surrounded by things that were more organic. they looked more out of place. That made it more dangerous to me. So anytime I could, if I could draw something that looked to where they were surrounded by foreign entities, I always did it when I could.
So someone on Twitch asked, what inspired all the random background characters you added in your run? There were definitely a lot more in your comics than any of the others before or after, and many of them were so unique that the masks ended up being retroactively canonized later on.
That is the first I've heard about that.
Yeah.
I love that. I don't know. Sometimes there were, I know there at the end of the first year, I think issue 5 there, is it 5 or is it 11? One of these has a shot. No, it's not this one. One of these has a shot where there are characters that don't exist. This is 9. Where's 11? And I had to just sort of make some up. I mean, they told me I could, and I thought that was really interesting that they told me I could, because I knew what was going to happen. People were going to ask. So who is that? Yeah, these guys. I made them up. I think I made that one up too, but I'm not sure. But definitely, I think that one is definitely made up, and I think he might be too. This one might be as well. They just gave me opportunities. And so it was the funny thing where, you know, by the way, if you guys don't know this, my wife's a really, really good artist as well. And it's got a really good aesthetic sense. And so from time to time, we'll just talk about art and drawing. And so one of the things that we'll come across sometimes is if we see something that looks out of place, or if we have 5 or 6 of something, what would the 7th look like? And so when I made them up, what you kind of have to do is say, look at what are the pieces that exist, what hasn't been made but looks congruent. Yeah. And I can tell you, I know I had to change his mask. I had a head on him that it wasn't supposed to, but it just had 2 points on it, and it was on the top of his head, and it was too easy to trigger that it was like a Batman reference. And gotcha. Batman has no business being in Lego Bionicle. Yeah. And so I remember that was one of the few requests I had. Now, the funny thing about it is if he's colored yellow like this, you probably wouldn't ever trigger anything. But it's one of the things you kind of have to be careful of, because even though you could take these things apart and use their pieces to make new characters, there seem to be certain pieces that worked better as either Piraka or some better as Toa, and their proportions were different. And so when I made them up, you know, I had to kind of be aware of that. If people liked my made up characters, I'm really flattered, because as I found out from a 5-year-old, you can definitely do it wrong.
Yeah, fans have actually modeled masks based on the ones you made up, they say.
I had somebody send me some 3D printed masks where they said, hey, this was yours, or you drew this and here it is. I thought you should have one. And I treasure all that stuff. It really is neat that here's something that people can really love, and I, you know, got to be a part of it. Look, when Matoro dies, Greg wrote what happened, but I decided what it looked like. I mean, that's kind of undeniable. When people talk about it, how did it happen? I'm the guy who decided it. That's kind of special. I will also say this, and I talk to a lot of people who are interested in making comic books in general. This is a hard job if you don't like the stuff. That is to say, because a lot of the other people who are working in this field, they really love it and they really, really know it. They are taking it very seriously and they're trying to do it right. And if you don't have that kind of reinvestment, you just kind of can't keep up. I always kind of feel like, you know, if somebody said to me, for example, I've got a friend who's a really, really good equestrian artist. She draws horses all the time. And if somebody said to the two of us, hey, I want you to draw the most beautiful bridle for a horse. You know, I can get out some horse books and I can look up beautiful bridles and I can make one up. But I'm not a part of that culture. She is. She knows it. She can make one. She knows what it is that people value about it. She doesn't have to research it. She knows it internally. And that speaks to kind of what I wanted to do with the Bionicle. So the first thing that I did when I got them, even though the script arrived, I just played with the toys for a little while. Yeah. I just wanted to see what they could do. the best way to be good at this stuff is to understand it and be a fan of it.
Yeah.
Anyway, what do you guys think? I think this has come along pretty well. Maybe I might need to color them. And here's the other question. Would you guys like to see me back next year? Because I do have more things from the archives.
Yes, I think that's a lock at this point. Looking at these comments, everybody is talking about how fun it is to watch you actually draw on paper and how you've managed to get digital effects on actual paper.
That is one of my most fun things when people just say, how'd you make that? What program did you use? And I said, I used no program. And they don't believe me. Sometimes they don't, sometimes they do. But then when I can do it in person, and you know, you saw me do it. There was nothing I did on this that wasn't conventional.
Yeah.
This is pretty much all just paint and ink, just as I described. Anyway, I think this one's about done.
Pretty great. And it's just about 10 o'clock. So
and it's just about 10 o'clock.
10:02 actually.
So I will say this. I want to thank everybody for having me. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. I want to thank everybody for saying the nice things you said, and particularly if you were one of the guys who didn't like my art when you were young, and you came around to it, I thank you for that. And if you still don't like me, let me tell you, I apologize, but I did try very hard.
Yeah.
Lego did want something different, and I think I gave it to them. And come on, that's a cool looking Axonn. Here's what I think I should do. If nothing else, why don't I scan it so I can post it on my Facebook page, and then you guys can see it in really great detail.
Yes.
Maybe we'll add some digital color to them. That would be kind of cool.
A couple of people have pointed out we never did get to the Bionicle wrap, so you guys will have to go find it on your own on YouTube. I think it's pretty easy to find a version.
Yeah, what's the Bionicle wrap? Who was the character again?
It's the Piraka wrap is the one I got sent. So it's pretty great. I have to say, I was watching it in the background while you were chatting.
Is there by any chance like Hakan wearing a big Flavor Flav clock?
Yeah.
That would be cool.
I didn't see that part yet. That's too old for this crowd, I think.
Well, that Flavor Flav clock was cool stuff.
So yes, you guys don't worry. We will make sure we end our evening at home here by watching the Piraka wrap before we go to bed. I promise.
Anyway, so how was World Bionicle Day? Everybody have a good time? Can we turn on the other camera?
Oh yeah, here, I'll get that
Let's
back
do
on
that
for you.
because let's have you guys see what this guy looks like here pretty quickly.
Yeah.
How's that?
Very nice. Yeah.
Not bad.
It's get a good sense of the scale too. It's hard to tell just how big it is when you're.
Now I rarely got to work quite this large, but the funny thing about it was I couldn't because I had to draw on this DC board. But these days when I do covers for Dynamite, I'm making them a little bit larger.
You could turn off your camera on the computer and then they can really see you. I know.
Let's do that. This is why Aili tells me how to do all this work. See if that's a little bit better. See if I can adjust this light. Yep. So there he is. And I tell you, I posted on Facebook that drawing these again would be kind of like seeing old friends. And it really is. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to change something on here. This is where you got to be careful with me, because this is sort of a dangerous thing. His eye needs to glow back here like this one does. But
for those of you who haven't watched Stuart draw before, this is how every one of his shows ends, with him saying, okay, all right, we're done. Wait. One more thing.
There's an awful lot of light in back here. So see that little bit I just buffed in there? That brought out the light in his eye back there. That's the sort of thing that I wrestled with. Now, that might have driven my colors crazy because I was really dictating the light at that point. But, I mean, I think if I got the lighting right, I felt that all he had to do was get the colors quite right.
Here's the other thing. So now we're just looking at your computer, just so you know.
There we go. There. I hope you can see I had a little bit of gray in there. What happened? Oh, I bumped my mouse and it called up the weather on my screen. You guys can still see it. Anyway, there it is. I hope you like the details on them. I'll scan them so you guys can see them. Give me about a day or so, but it'll be on my Facebook. Go to my Facebook page. It's just my name, Stuart Sayger. Add me as a friend, and you get to see this art and lots of other art I post. Here's the cool thing. I don't do a lot of political stuff. I post drawings I make. That's about all I do.
Yep.
I might tell you if I'm at it doing a store signing or something like that. But there are some really cool things in the archives that I didn't pull out to show everybody. Here just to tease everybody. This whole book is full of unused cover layouts. So how about this, just for fun? Let's find something I didn't show you guys. Okay, this is pretty cool. This was an unused cover layout for Bionicle number 11. Let's see.
Look, they're already excited about next year.
This is how I would turn them in. So this is, let's see, that's number 1. It looks like I have 3. Won't surprise you, 3 is the one they took. Looks an awful lot like the printed issue. So that's the one we went with. But it could have been this cover, and you can see he would have been largely in silhouette with all the figures stacked behind him. This shows all the figures a little bit better, but this is a more solemn sort of picture, which is kind of what I always tried to go for, this more drama. See these rocks stand up here with these shadows? These are the things that are going to allow me to have a lot of drama in this.
Yeah.
So you think you've seen all the Bionicle? You haven't. There's lots more. Any last questions from anybody?
Looks good, hon. I think we should sign off and have dinner. So
I'm gonna one last time tell you, if you guys want any of the Bionicle comics, I have a couple of these. This is a set of 5. I think there's 3, 4, and 5 here, plus 11 and 9. I'm selling these. It is a $50 set, plus there's about $5 shipping. Each one comes signed with the certificate of authenticity, which I will date as Bionicle Day, August 10th. They're available on my website, or you can write me a private message. And as I said, they all come signed. Look at that. That looks great. The glare is perfect. You can see my signature.
awesome.
Thanks,
All right.
everybody. Have a good night. We'll see you soon. Let's see if I know how to do this. Bye-bye.